Get on your knees. I said get down. The voice echoed across the parking lot of Henderson Plaza, cutting through the humid summer air like a blade. Officer Mitchell Crane stood with his hand hovering over his holster, his face flushed red with authority, his eyes wild with the kind of power that comes from a badge and a gun. Dr. Amara Bennett didn't move. Not yet. She stood perfectly still beside her silver Mercedes, her tailored charcoal suit immaculate, her briefcase still in hand, her eyes steady and unblinking as they met him. "I asked you a question, ma'am," she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of someone who'd spent years in boardrooms where millions were decided on her word alone. "What is the reason for this stop?" "The reason?" Mitchell's laugh was sharp, cruel, the kind that makes your stomach turn. "The reason is I told you to get on your knees, and you're refusing to comply with a lawful order." A crowd had already begun to gather. It was 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, and the shopping plaza was busy. Phones emerged from pockets like fireflies at dusk, red recording lights blinking, capturing every second of what was unfolding. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here. Not to her. But it was happening. 15 minutes earlier, Dr. Amara Bennett had been sitting in her office on the 23rd floor of the Bennett Medical Solutions headquarters, a building she'd opened just 5 years ago with nothing but a business loan, a medical degree, and a vision to revolutionize healthcare accessibility in underserved communities. She'd been reviewing quarterly reports. Her company had just secured a $40 million contract with the state to implement telehealth systems in rural areas. The governor himself had called to congratulate her that morning. She'd left early to pick up a gift for her daughter's birthday. Something simple. Something normal. She had no idea that in less than 20 minutes, she'd be fighting for her dignity in a parking lot while a cop with a power complex decided her fate. "I'm going to ask you one more time," Amara said, her voice still steady but with an edge now, sharp as glass. "What is the probable cause for this stop?" "I was parking my vehicle. I haven't committed any traffic violation. I haven't broken any law." Mitchell took a step forward, his boots heavy on the asphalt. "Your taillight's out, and when I approached your vehicle, you showed signs of suspicious behavior." "My taillight is not out," Amara replied, her jaw tightening. "And this suspicious behavior you're referring to was me checking my phone for my daughter's text message. Are you arguing with me? I'm asking you to follow protocol." That word, protocol, seemed to ignite something in Mitchell. His face darkened. His partner, a younger officer named Davis who'd been standing awkwardly to the side, shifted his weight nervously. "Davis, do you see this?" Mitchell called out, his voice rising for the growing audience. "This is what we're dealing with here. Total disrespect for law enforcement. Thinks she's above the law because she's got a fancy car and a designer suit." "Officer Crane," Davis said quietly, his voice uncertain. Maybe you should back me up instead of questioning me in front of civilians," Mitchell snapped. The crowd murmured. Someone in the back shouted, "Let her go. She didn't do anything." Mitchell's hand moved to his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47. I need backup at Henderson Plaza. I have an uncooperative suspect refusing lawful orders." "Suspect." Amara's voice cut through the air. "I'm not a suspect. I'm a citizen who was parking her car. Get on your knees." The shout came so suddenly, so violently, that several people in the crowd gasped. Mitchell had closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his face now inches from Amara's, his breath hot and angry. For the first time, something flickered across Amara's face. Not fear exactly, but a recognition, a terrible, familiar recognition that this moment could go anywhere, that she'd done everything right, and it didn't matter, that the rules she'd followed her entire life, the education she'd earned, the empire she'd built, none of it mattered right now. Right now, she was just a black woman standing in front of a white cop who decided she needed to be put in her place. "I will comply," Amara said, her voice quieter now, "if you can articulate a legal reason for detaining me." Last warning. The crowd had swelled to at least 30 people now. Every phone was out. Every eye was watching. This wasn't just a confrontation anymore. It was a spectacle. And Mitchell seemed to feed off it, his chest puffed out, his authority on full display. "Officer Crane," Davis tried again, his voice desperate now. I really think we should. Step back, Davis. Amara looked at the crowd, then at the phone's recording, then back at Mitchell. She was calculating. You could see it in her eyes. The math of dignity versus safety, of pride versus survival. She'd been here before, in different forms. Every successful black woman in America had been here before. The moment when someone decides you've gotten too comfortable, too confident, too unwilling to bow. Slowly, carefully, Amara set her briefcase down on the ground. The crowd went silent. Even the traffic on the nearby street seemed to hush, as if the whole world was holding its breath. She lowered herself to one knee, then the other. The asphalt was hot against her skin, rough through the fabric of her expensive suit pants. She kept her back straight, her head high, her eyes locked on Mitchell's face. And Mitchell smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a slight curl at the corner of his mouth, barely visible, but it was there. A smile that said, I win. I'll put you in your place. Hands behind your back, he ordered. Am I under arrest? Hands behind your back. Amara complied. She laced her fingers together behind her back, her gold wedding ring catching the sunlight. In the crowd, someone was crying. Someone else was cursing. A woman shouted, "This is wrong. This is so wrong." Mitchell reached for his cuffs, and that's when Davis did something unexpected. He stepped forward and placed a hand on Mitchell's shoulder. Crane, her briefcase. Look at her briefcase. Mitchell paused, irritation flashing across his face. What? Just look at the briefcase. With a huff of annoyance, Mitchell glanced down at the leather briefcase Amara had set on the ground. It was monogrammed, AMB, in elegant gold lettering. But attached to the handle was something else. A laminated badge. Mitchell bent down and picked up the briefcase, tilting it toward the light to read the badge more clearly. His face went pale. What is it? Someone in the crowd called out. Mitchell didn't answer. His hand started to shake slightly as he looked from the badge to Amara's face, then back to the badge again. He read it 3 times, as if trying to convince himself he was seeing it wrong. The badge read, Dr. Amara M. Bennett, Board Member, State Medical Ethics Commission, Presidential Healthcare Advisory Council, Emergency Contact, Governor's Office. But it wasn't just the badge. Clipped beside, it was another ID, a security clearance badge with a number that Mitchell recognized immediately. The kind of clearance that meant this woman didn't just know people in power. She was power. Davis leaned in and whispered something in Mitchell's ear, too quiet for anyone else to hear. Whatever he said made Mitchell's face go from pale to gray, the color of ash. The crowd sensed a shift. The energy changed. Phones pushed forward, zooming in, trying to capture whatever was happening. Officer, Amara said from her knees, her voice calm, almost gentle now. Is there a problem? Mitchell's mouth opened. Closed. It opened again. No sound came out. His hands were trembling visibly now as he held the briefcase. The same hands that had been so steady, so confident just moments ago when he was barking orders and demanding submission. He started, his voice cracking. You didn't do that? Amara asked. She was still on her knees, still in the position of submission he'd forced her into, but somehow the power dynamic had shifted. You could feel it in the air, like electricity before a storm. Behind Mitchell, 3 police cruisers pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing, the backup he called for. Officers emerged quickly, assessing the scene, and then stopping short when they saw what was happening. One of them, a sergeant with gray hair and 30 years on his face, took one look at Amara on her knees, then at Mitchell holding her briefcase, then at the crowd with their phones out, and his expression transformed into pure horror. "Oh no," he breathed. "Oh no, no, no. Mitchell, what did you do?" "I pulled her over for." "That's Dr. Amara Bennett," the sergeant hissed, loud enough for the front row of the crowd to hear. The name rippled through the onlookers like a wave. "Do you have any idea who she is?" "I know who she is now. She's on the governor's speed dial. She's friends with the mayor. She just had lunch with the police commissioner last week about our department's new healthcare initiative." "What were you thinking?" The crowd erupted. Voices overlapped, shock, anger, vindication all mixed together. The cameras pushed closer. This was no longer just a video of police harassment. This was a scandal in real time. This was career-ending. This was national news. Amara remained on her knees, perfectly still, letting the moment unfold around her like a storm she'd weathered 1,000 times before. "Dr. Bennett," the sergeant said, his voice shaking as he approached. "Ma'am, I am so sorry. Please, let me help you up." "No." Amara's voice cut through the chaos like a knife through butter. "I'll stand when Officer Crane tells me I'm free to go, since he's the one who put me here." Every eye turned to Mitchell. The young officer looked like he might be sick. His face had gone from gray to green, sweat beading on his forehead despite the fading afternoon heat. You're free to go," he whispered. "I'm sorry," Amara said. "I didn't hear you." "You're free to go, ma'am," Mitchell said louder, his voice breaking on the last word. Amara rose slowly, deliberately, brushing off her knees with careful dignity. She took her briefcase from Mitchell's trembling hands, her fingers steady and sure. She looked him directly in the eyes. "What's your badge number, officer?" "Badge number 2847, ma'am." Mitchell's voice was barely a whisper now. All the fire and fury drained out of him like water from a broken dam. He couldn't meet her eyes, his gaze fixed somewhere around her collarbone, his jaw working soundlessly as if he wanted to say something. Anything that might undo the last 15 minutes. Amara pulled out her phone with deliberate slowness. Every movement was measured, controlled. She typed the number into her notes app while the crowd watched in absolute silence. The only sound was the click of her manicured nails against the screen and the distant wail of more sirens approaching. "Thank you, Officer Crane," she said, her voice carrying across the parking lot. Professional, courteous, devastating in its calmness. The sergeant, his nameplate read Morrison, stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture somewhere between pleading and surrender. "Dr. Bennett, on behalf of the Henderson Police Department, I want to personally apologize for this. This completely unacceptable." "Sergeant Morrison." Amara's tone stopped in mid-sentence. "I'm going to collect my daughter's birthday gift from the store, and then I'm going home. We'll speak about this later." She adjusted her briefcase, straightened her jacket, and began walking toward the entrance of the shopping plaza. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea, phones still recording, capturing every second of her dignified exit. But then she paused, turned back. The entire parking lot held its breath. "Officer Crane," she called out, and Mitchell's head snapped up like a puppet on strings. "I want you to know something. I don't need this badge." She gestured to the IDs on her briefcase. "To deserve respect. Neither does the woman who cleans my office building. Neither does the young man who delivered my lunch today. Neither does anyone else you might pull over tomorrow or next week or next year." Her voice rose, not in anger, but in a kind of controlled passion that made every word land like a gavel. "The problem isn't that you didn't know who I was. The problem is that you thought it didn't matter. You saw a black woman in a nice car, and you decided that was enough. Enough to humiliate me. Enough to force me to my knees in front of dozens of strangers. Enough to make you smile while you did it." Mitchell flinched visibly at that last part. In the crowd, someone gasped. They'd seen it too, that smile. "So yes, I'll be filing a formal complaint. And yes, there will be an investigation. But not because I'm Dr. Bennett. Not because I have the governor's number. Because what you did here today was wrong when you thought I was nobody, and it's wrong now that you know I'm somebody." The silence that followed was deafening. Amara turned and walked into the store, her heels clicking against the pavement with the rhythm of justice delayed but not denied. The video went viral in under 3 hours. By midnight, it had 4 million views. By morning, it had 22 million. By the end of the week, it would break 100 million across all platforms. Hashtag Justice for Dr. Bennett trended worldwide. News outlets from CNN to BBC ran segments. Legal analysts dissected every frame. Civil rights organizations issued statements. The police union scrambled to respond. But what happened behind the scenes, in the offices and conference rooms where real power moves, that's where the true story unfolded. The morning after the incident, Police Chief Raymond Watts sat in his office at 6 a.m., watching the video for the 17th time. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls from the mayor's office, the city council, community leaders, reporters, and at least 4 different lawyers. His assistant knocked softly on the door. "Chief, the mayor's on line 1. Again. And Dr. Bennett is here." Let's looked up sharply. "Here? Now." She says she doesn't have an appointment, but she thought you might want to speak with her before this gets any bigger. Watts glanced at his phone, which was lighting up with another incoming call from Mayor. He pressed the button to send it to voicemail and stood up, straightening his uniform. "Send her in." Dr. Amara Bennett walked into the office with the same composed dignity she'd shown in that parking lot. She wore a different suit today, navy blue, equally impeccable, and carried a leather folder under her arm. "Dr. Bennett," Watts began, extending his hand. "I want to start by offering my deepest—" "Chief Watts," Amara interrupted gently, shaking his hand with a firm grip. "I'm not here for apologies. I'm here because I think we have an opportunity." Watts blinked. "An opportunity?" Amara sat down without being invited, crossing her legs and opening her folder. "This incident has put a spotlight on your department. Right now, that spotlight is showing something very ugly. But spotlights can illuminate problems, or they can illuminate solutions. Which story would you like to tell?" For the next hour, Amara laid out a proposal that was so comprehensive, so carefully thought out, that Watts realized she must have been working on it all night. It wasn't just about Officer Crane. It wasn't just about punishment or accountability, though those things were part of it. It was about transformation. "I want mandatory bias training for every officer in this department," Amara said, ticking items off on her fingers. "Not the 2-hour session you currently have. Real training. Ongoing. With measurable outcomes and consequences for failure. I want community oversight committees with actual power, not just advisory roles. I want body cameras that can't be turned off, with footage automatically uploaded to independent servers." Watts listened, his expression unreadable. "I want a citizens review board that includes formerly incarcerated individuals, because they understand the system from angles you and I never will. I want investment in de-escalation training, mental health crisis intervention, and community policing initiatives that actually connect officers with the neighborhoods they serve." She paused, leaning forward. "And I want Officer Crane to be part of it." That got Watts' attention. "You want him involved?" "I want him suspended without pay for 60 days while he completes an intensive training program. I want him to spend 100 hours volunteering in community centers in predominantly black neighborhoods. I want him to meet with civil rights historians, to listen to people share their experiences with police harassment, to understand, really understand, what he did and why it matters." Amara's eyes were steady. If he completes this program successfully, genuinely commits to learning and changing, then he can return to duty. But on probation, one more incident like this, and he's gone. And if he refuses? Watts asked quietly. Then he's gone anyway. But this way, he has a chance to be part of the solution instead of just another example of the problem. Watts sat back in his chair, studying her. "You know, most people would want his badge. I want him fired immediately. Want him destroyed. Most people didn't kneel on that asphalt, Chief Watts." "I did." Amara's voice was soft but steel-edged. "And I learned a long time ago that revenge doesn't change systems. It just makes you feel better for a day. Then tomorrow comes, and the system is still broken, and another Officer Crane pulls over another black woman, and we do this dance all over again." She stood up, closing her folder. "I don't want revenge. I want revolution. And revolution requires building something new, not just tearing down what's broken." The press conference happened 3 days later. The room was packed. Every major news outlet, local media, live streamers, and representatives from civil rights organizations. The energy was electric, expectant. Everyone had their theories about what would happen. Most assumed Dr. Bennett would demand blood. Chief Watts stood at the podium first, looking older than he had a week ago. He outlined the incident, taking full departmental responsibility for the failure of training and oversight that allowed it to happen. Then he announced Officer Crane's suspension and the new reform initiatives. But then Amara stepped up to the microphone, and the room went silent. "My name is Dr. Amara Bennett," she began, her voice clear and strong. "And 8 days ago, I was forced to kneel in a parking lot while a police officer abused his power because he could, because he saw me as less than human, Because the system that gave him that badge and that gun never taught him that power without accountability is just tyranny with a uniform. Cameras flashed like lightning. I could have let this moment be about me, about my credentials, my connections, my ability to make this officer's life very difficult. But that would miss the point entirely. She looked directly into the cameras. This isn't about me. It's about every person who's been pulled over for driving while black. It's about every woman who's been dismissed or diminished because of her gender. It's about every young man who's been stopped and frisked because he was in the wrong neighborhood. It's about every person who's been on their knees, literally or figuratively, because someone with power decided they didn't matter. Her voice grew stronger. I was lucky. I had a briefcase with the right badges. I had connections that scare that officer. I had resources to fight back. But what about all the people who don't? What about the single mother working 2 jobs who can't afford to miss work for a court date? What about the teenager who doesn't know his rights? What about all the incidents that happen when no cameras are recording? She paused, letting the question hang in the air. That's why I'm not just filing a complaint. I'm establishing the Bennett Foundation for Police Accountability and Community Justice. We're starting with a $5 million endowment to fund legal representation for victims of police misconduct who can't afford lawyers. We're creating a national database of police complaints because officers who abuse power in one city often just move to another. We're funding scholarships for young people from communities most affected by police violence who want to enter law enforcement. Because we need good officers, officers who understand the communities they serve, officers who see their neighbors as human beings, not threats. The room erupted with questions, but Amara held up her hand. I'm not finished. This foundation will also support officers who speak up against corruption and abuse within their departments. Because I know there are good cops, officers who are as disgusted by what happened to me as I am. And those officers need protection when they choose integrity over the blue wall of silence. She looked over at Chief Watts. Chief Watts has committed to making Henderson a pilot city for comprehensive police reform. Other cities are watching. Other departments are taking notes. What happened in that parking lot was wrong, but what we do next can be right. In the back of the room, largely unnoticed by the press, Officer Mitchell Crane sat in civilian clothes. He'd been required to attend the press conference as part of his suspension terms. His face was pale, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. As the conference wrapped up and reporters began filing out, Amara made her way through the crowd. She saw Crane trying to slip out a side door. "Officer Crane," she called out. He froze, turned slowly. The room wasn't empty yet. Several reporters stopped, sensing another story developing. Amara walked over to him. They stood face to face for the first time since the parking lot. The height difference was less noticeable now. He wasn't looming, wasn't projecting that aggressive authority. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Mitchell's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "I don't know what to say to you." "Then listen," Amara replied quietly. "I could have you fired. You know that, right? With one phone call, I could end your career." Mitchell nodded miserably. "But I'm not going to do that. Do you know why?" He shook his head. "Because I thought a lot this week about that moment when you smiled. That tiny smile when I got on my knees. And I realized something. You weren't happy because you hate black people. You were happy because you had power and I didn't, and for a moment, you got to feel like you mattered by making me feel like I didn't." Mitchell's eyes were watering now. "And that tells me you're not a monster. You're just a man who was given authority without wisdom, power without perspective. And that can be fixed, if you're willing to do the work. Why would you give me a chance?" Mitchell whispered. "After what I did to you?" Amara was quiet for a moment. Then, "Because my daughter asked me what happened when she saw the video. She's 9 years old, and she watched her mother on her knees, and she asked me why the police officer was so mean. And I had to decide what lesson I wanted to teach her." She looked at him steadily. "I could teach her that people who hurt you should be destroyed. That revenge is justice. That power should be met with power. Or I could teach her that the hardest thing in the world, and the most important, is to look at someone who's wronged you and still see their humanity. To believe people can change. To build bridges even when you have every right to burn them." A tear slid down Mitchell's cheek. "Don't waste this chance," Amara said softly. Become the officer you should have been that day. Learn, grow, change, and then teach other officers what you learned. That's how you make this right. Not by apologizing to me, but by never making anyone else feel the way you made me feel. She extended her hand. Mitchell stared at it for a long moment, then shook it, his grip shaky. Thank you, he managed. Don't thank me. Earn it. The Henderson Police Department graduation ceremony looked different this year. For one thing, there were more community members in attendance than usual. For another, the keynote speaker wasn't a politician or a senior officer. It was Dr. Amara Bennett. She stood at the podium, looking at the rows of new recruits in their crisp uniforms, their faces young and earnest and full of the same idealism that probably filled Mitchell Crane once upon a time, before bad training and worse culture turned that idealism into something darker. When you put on that badge, Amara told them, you're making a promise. Not to the department, not to your fellow officers, to the community, to every person you'll ever interact with, the ones who respect you and the ones who fear you, the ones who wave at you on the street and the ones who cross to the other side when they see you coming. She paused. 6 months ago, an officer from this department made me kneel in a parking lot because he forgot that promise. He saw a black woman and decided his assumptions were more important than my rights. His power was more valid than my dignity. The room was absolutely silent. But here's what I want you to understand. That officer isn't a villain in a story. He's a warning. He's what happens when we give people authority without teaching them responsibility. When we give them power without requiring empathy. When we create a culture where protecting other officers matters more than protecting citizens. Amara looked at each row of recruits. You have a choice to make every single day you wear that uniform. You could be the officer who sees people, really sees them, as human beings with dignity and rights and stories and families. Or you can be the officer who sees threats and challenges to your authority. You can build trust, or you can demand compliance. You can be part of your community, or you can be an occupying force. She smiled, but it was a sad smile. It's not an easy job. You'll face real danger, real criminals, real situations where split-second decisions matter. But most of your job, most of it, is just interaction. Traffic stops, welfare checks, noise complaints. And in those moments, you get to decide, am I here to protect and serve, or am I here to control and command? Her voice grew stronger. Officer Crane, the man who put me on my knees, is somewhere in this city right now, finishing his training program. In 2 weeks, he'll return to duty. Some people think that's wrong, that he should have been fired. Maybe they're right. She let that hang in the air. But I chose differently because I believe people can change. I believe in second chances. And I believe that the officer who learns from their mistakes can teach more about justice than the officer who never makes any. Amara looked up at the balcony where department leadership sat. Chief Woods gave her a small nod. 3 other departments have adopted Henderson's reform program. 7 more are considering it. That parking lot video has been watched over 200 million times worldwide. It's been painful. It's been humiliating. It's been exhausting. But it's also been clarifying. She gathered her notes. You are the first class to graduate under the new training standards. You spent 50 more hours in de-escalation training than any previous class. You've done community immersion work. You've studied civil rights history. You've heard from people who've been harmed by police and officers who've been transformed by accountability. Amara looked at these young faces, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, every background imaginable, and saw the future. Be better than we were. Be better than the officer who made me kneel. Be the officer I told my daughter you could be when she asked me if all police were mean. Be the reason someone's child doesn't grow up afraid of the people who are supposed to protect them. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper, but in the silent room, everyone heard it. Wear that badge like it's a promise you make every single day. And never, ever forget, the person you're pulling over, the person you're questioning, the person you're arresting. They're someone's daughter, someone's son, someone's parents, someone who matters, regardless of whether you know their name or their title or who they know. She stepped back from the podium. Thank you for choosing to serve. Now, choose to serve with honor. The applause started slowly, then built like a wave, filling the auditorium. But Amara wasn't looking at the crowd anymore. Her eyes found a figure standing in the doorway at the back of the room. Mitchell Crane, in civilian clothes, listening, learning, changed or changing. Only time would tell. Their eyes met across the distance. He nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement, of understanding, of commitment. Amara nodded back. The parking lot at Henderson Plaza looks the same as it did 6 months ago. Same stores, same asphalt, same parking spaces. But there's something new now. A small plaque, mounted on a stone near the entrance. It reads, "On this spot, Dr. Amara Bennett was forced to kneel by an officer who forgot that badges are not crowns and citizens are not subjects. May this place remind us that justice requires not just laws, but conscience. Not just power, but compassion. Not just authority, but accountability. We all deserve dignity, whether you know our names or not." Under it, a QR code that links to the Bennett Foundation for Police Accountability and Community Justice. Every day, dozens of people stop to read it, to scan the code, to donate, to share their own stories of encounters with police, some good, some terrible. Every day, the conversation continues. And somewhere in Henderson, Officer Mitchell Crane begins his first shift back on duty, his body camera recording, his training fresh in his mind, and a woman's words echoing in his memory. Become the officer you should have been that day. The sun sets over Henderson Plaza. The parking lot empties. The stores close. But the work continues. The change, slow and hard and necessary, continues. Because one woman refused to let humiliation be the end of the story. She made it the beginning. Power without accountability is tyranny. Authority without empathy is oppression. But change without hope is impossible. Dr. Amara Bennett could have chosen revenge. She chose revolution. She could have demanded destruction. She demanded transformation. And in doing so, she reminded us all that the hardest justice, and the most powerful, is the justice that sees the humanity in everyone, even those who forgot to see it in us. If this story moved you, if it made you think differently about power, about prejudice, about the possibility of change, share it. Because every share is a reminder that dignity isn't negotiable. Those rights aren't privileges. That we all deserve to be seen as human. Subscribe to hear more stories of courage in the face of injustice. Hit that notification bell to be reminded that even when the system fails, people don't have to. And remember, you don't need a title or a connection or the right badge to deserve respect. You just need to be human. And that's enough. That should always be enough.